Good day, and welcome to the Budding Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Bridges. In each episode, I cover my experiences, both good and bad, of being a business builder, as well as my journey through the crazy world of entrepreneurship to reach my goal of earning $10 million a year. All right, dear listeners, we are on episode 136 of the podcast. Today is February 22nd, 2024. We're in the third week of the month, so that means we're getting ready to start turning away from the existing material and start heading in towards what we're going to be covering in March. Now, if you listen in the background very carefully, you might hear a lot of noise, cracks, booms, things like this. It's a beautiful Indiana rainy day here, and I'm enjoying it. I love to be able to just... Anytime the rain comes and the thunder and the lightning, it's exciting for me. I love to go outside, and sometimes it's a little dangerous, but you use your head. You never put yourself into a bad position. And so it's a wonderful time to be here in Indiana as we kind of make that turn towards spring. So today we're going to go ahead and head into our books. I've been spending a lot more time on 177 mental toughness secrets of the world class. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, I'm doing this every single day. And it's great because I'm able to have a little bit of homework to go through for the day, perspective to stay focused on what I'm trying to achieve, and then, the next day come back at it again and do the same type of thing. This week, I've introduced Selling You, with an exclamation mark, put together by Napoleon Hill. There's a group of researchers that took this material and combined it into a book from a lot of his material, based it on some other pieces that he had written. And so I'm digging into that. It's really interesting already, just a few pages in. Objections by Jeb Blunt. I'm still working through that. By the way, I have temporarily set aside the 9-figure mindset, just simply because I want to dig in a little more on the Napoleon Hill side, the Steve Siebold side, that's the 177 mental toughness secrets, and dig into those objections by Jeb Blunt. Now, I want to take a quote this week, and this is a good one because it's relevant to me, and I'm sure it probably is to a lot of my listeners. This is from Jim Rohn. And you'll know that I take a lot of things from Jim Rohn because I try to put in at least 2 days a week where I'm listening to his material on the YouTube channel. He says, "We must all suffer from one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons." And it's so true. I mean, I think back over my life about the things that I wanted to do and should have done and didn't accomplish. And it's a lot of regret. And it weighs heavily upon me as I spend my time here going through and trying to expand my own business, knowing that there were things I should have done a long time ago. We're going to dig into business strategies this week. We've been dealing with Agile strategies as our topic for the month of February. I'm actually doing a workshop next week. One of the topics that I'm going to be bringing into it is Agile as an approach for business itself. And it's going to be specifically targeted at law professionals. And so how the Agile frameworks work within this. So I'm going to borrow some of the material that's going to be in the workshop and put it into today's podcast. But essentially, the idea is still the same. You get a chance to look at your own business and think about it. How am I going to use this? Now, Agile has a whole series of different frameworks, and a lot of them cover many different aspects. I wanted to focus specifically on revenue and cost as one's, there's a good boom for you. So this is focusing on the revenue and cost, and we're going to look at 4 of the frameworks today that make the difference for a lot of business in the revenue and cost factor, and we're going to actually cover them from the point of view of a law practice. So this is kind of a little teaser for those of you who are interested in the workshop. If you do want to attend, I will be having a replay occurring, and I'll be letting you know when that is and how to get a hold of it. As we've talked about with Agile, we're looking at many different types of things that focus on adaptability and responsiveness to change. Now, by this, what we're talking about is the curveballs that get thrown at you every single day. Clients who come to you and say, oh, I don't have any money to pay for that service that I agreed to pay for 12 months. 6 months in, I'm out of money. Well, these types of things, will affect your business. They really will. Or they change their mind. Their client or their customer wants a change, and so they have to flex with that. And so these are types of things that adaptability and responsiveness to change will factor in. Another aspect we talked about is structured planning with the capacity to pivot. Not necessarily to make major changes, but simply to stop where you are, turn the direction you need to go to achieve what your goals are, and then move that and adjust as needed based on new information, market conditions, and customer feedback. Now, this also fits within the same mindset of a few months ago. I was talking about the analogy of business being headwinds, tailwinds, and objects that are submerged that you can't see. This is similar because many times when we have a tailwind, we're going in the direction we want to go. But when we have a headwind, and that's about 2/3 of the time that we spend in business facing headwinds, this is a matter of turning slightly into the wind or turning away from the wind. Allow yourself to get around whatever it is that you're encountering and slowly make your way around it to be able to get back on track. So let's talk about some of these Agile frameworks. Again, there are 4 of them. Number 1, we're going to focus on Scrum. 2 is Kanban, and this is one that almost everybody knows and doesn't recognize it by that name. Lean and Crystal, and we'll be talking about each of these. Scrum in a legal environment would be case management efficiency. This is typical when a small law firm or a small business of any kind struggles with managing, in this case, a diverse caseload. You've got a lot of different types of cases you have to deal with. Many of us have projects of multiple types that we have to focus on. And we start getting missed deadlines and an overworked staff. Now, the traditional approach of handling cases as they come without prioritization creates all kinds of bottlenecks. Scrum gives you a lot of superiority because it allows for frequent reassessment of priorities based on the needs of your client or your customer, case urgencies, things that change, ensuring high priority tasks are completed first, improving the client satisfaction, and ultimately staff morale. Let's face it, if your staff is unhappy, it isn't going to make any difference what you do. There are going to be things that are going to set you back, and that's one of those things that you have to be very careful of. Now, Kanban, this is going to be in a legal strategy as streamlined workflow. I had a client, he was the owner of a sign and design shop, and they were having a lot of problems keeping track of everything. Even though they had a great software system to keep their projects in line, they couldn't easily make decisions on priorities as they went because they didn't get to actually see what was happening. And to borrow this scenario, the firm or the business experiences delays in document processing and inconsistent workflow, leading to inefficiencies and client dissatisfaction. Now, Kanban is essentially a matrix, and a lot of times you'll see somebody go in, they have lines on a whiteboard with columns and what have you, and the most simplest part of Kanban is do, doing, and done. It's basically a matrix where you can see each one of your projects or each one of your pieces. You can break it down into the segments, and as it moves through your process, then you can just assign, pieces of paper or whatever. And this is what he did, is they put magnets with, names of the project they had. And then all of the project folders that were associated with that were down in a holder below the board. So they could move the magnet from place to place to place, access the folder very easily, and then be able to see at a glance and make decisions about priorities, because you could see what's coming, the whole thing at a stand-back graphical precision of understanding the whole process. The idea is to provide a clear visual representation of work in its various stages, enabling easy identification of bottlenecks and workload balancing. So this whiteboard that he had that was implemented with the folders below it was a fast and easy way for him to be able to, number one, look at incoming projects and balance the workload, knowing that this has about 2/3 of it left and it's taken about a week to get there. So I got about a 2-week delay on the other end of it. And he really broke everything down, because they had to deal with not just the design of something, the manufacturing of signage. He had to get permits. They had to have pre-permits. They had to have the electrician to light it up. They had to have the installation company to install it. Just a whole lot of things that had to occur in a very structured way. And they didn't always adjust easily to changes, but once they got this down on the board, it became much simpler for them to use. So that's an example of Kanban. Lean is for particularly operational streamlining. And especially with any kind of a service business, they waste resources on redundant administration tasks and inefficient case handling processes, and it leads to high overhead costs. So by streamlining it down, we want to eliminate waste, ensure that every task contributes directly to client value, thereby reducing unnecessary costs and improving service delivery speed. All of this, Lean began with manufacturing, and now it's moved very well into service industries. I use Lean in my practices. When I'm doing projects for people, I'm getting it down to just the elements I need to worry about, and I don't worry about anything else. If it comes at me from a sideways thing, Kanban allows me to be able to see what that is going to affect and be able to make adjustments accordingly. And finally, Crystal is for personalized client services. This particular framework, it's usually for companies that struggle to maintain a personalized approach to client services. Usually it's because they're too rigid and too standardized in their procedures. Clients ask for more information and they're like, I haven't gotten that far yet. Crystal gives us the ability to customize of the processes. We can take the processes that are very strict and break them down into their sub-pieces and then see how we can better meet the client's needs and preferences. The goal here is to enhance the client satisfaction and loyalty. So you can see how these Agile frameworks work together. They adjust. Scrum and Crystal are not common, especially in the industries that a lot of people see. They're tied up in products, they're tied up behind the scenes, but they're still available as a framework for us to consider depending upon how your business, your practice, your service, whatever it is, has to function. But ultimately, these Agile frameworks allow us to be collaborative, to be flexible, and little or less hierarchy. Attorney practices are a great example of hierarchy that gets in the way. You have to have an attorney handle certain parts of things. You have to have a paralegal handle certain other parts of things. There are case managers and there are client managers and there are just all different types of people that work together If you've got too much hierarchy, you run into that problem that Crystal solves when you need customization of processes along the way. The whole idea here with Agile is we want to create a cross-functional team, a series of them. So for every attorney, let's say you have a practice involving 3 attorneys. Each one attorney might have 2 paralegals assigned to it and 3 staff members. And so it's easy to break it out. You can do that according to the strengths of the attorney and the practice areas that they focus on. And you can move practices around a little bit to adjust things. People can move from one release group to another release group, to maybe even a third release group. This even works for a very small kind of a practice or any kind of a small service. This is really a nice thing. Once we get a reduced hierarchy, it opens up the flexibility and it opens up the collaboration, because attorneys who know the details, people at the top who know the details and are very good with subject matter experts, can take a less of a hand-holding process. They don't have to hand-hold people. Everyone can work to their strengths. So this is why I like to focus on Agile, especially in legal. It's a complete rewrite from anything anyone generally does. But if you look at all the major software packages that are case management practices, they encourage Agile. They're built on an Agile mindset and an Agile process. So you can build small teams to get the work done, rather than having one person working independently of another person, and you end up with a lot of problems with that. So that's the Agile frameworks in a nutshell. We had our Jim Rohn quote today. We've still got our same books. I did introduce that Selling You by Napoleon Hill. I am still working through Jeb Blunt's Objections. For right now, we're going to go ahead and cut this off. I want to thank you very much for your time today. I want to wish you the best in your health, your wealth, your business, your family, everything about you. Take care. We'll see you back next week to wrap up the Agile frameworks, the Agile process, and start moving into first principles for the month of March.